Well, hey guys, we are back. Another COVID conversation. I'm with Veronica Cabrera. Hello.
Hi.
Most of you, anybody with small children know Veronica from her work as a nursery director, but she's also a part of the Arts Guild. She painted the mural out on 11th Street on the side of the building, the children's building, which is amazing. You are essentially our artist in residence. Yeah, it's a fair description. Yeah, a lot of the stuff you see painted around this place was painted by Veronica. Hey, thank you. I'm really excited about this conversation because we're going to talk a little bit about your journey with art, and at the end, maybe hit some practical tools for people that are managing some stresses with COVID that might find some solace or refuge in art. I want to really start with, we were talking about your early experiences with art. You said something that I think was really profound, that art was like a refuge. It sort of, you said that it felt like God's arms were around you. Can you speak a little bit to that? What was that experience? When's the first time you sort of said, wait a minute, there's something here in art that is important?
Well, like I was saying, so, life was kind of difficult and there was a lot of situations I was in. And one of the things that I had to do was go with my grandmother to these meetings that she was a part of where kids were not allowed. And so since she didn't have childcare, she would take me with her. But again, kids were not allowed. Sometimes kids are meant to be seen and not heard. And back in the day, And so she would put me underneath the table and would be like, be quiet, like here's some art supplies, just kind of keep to yourself so that she could attend her meetings and do her stuff. Well, she was in a Catholic organization. And so we were at a meeting one time and there was a few nuns present and they started talking about the Holy Spirit. And I'm just drawing away and I start drawing this dove and clouds and the sun and just start drawing. And then they take a break and I come out and I'm like showing her. And then one of the nuns is like, oh my goodness, look at what you created. And then it became like this thing and they were all excited and it became almost okay for me to be there. Like, it was like, okay, well, she's like not getting in the way, running around, breaking things, she's creating this beautiful art. So that was one of the moments where I realized that God had given me like a little gift. And so he was kind of hugging me every day with that gift and kind of protecting me, like showing me that I was something and I was special and I had this little gift that was going to be with me and I was going to be okay.
And it also brought joy to others. Your grandmother and the people that begin to recognize that, oh wow, like there's something beautiful that you've created. What was that a pretty significant discovery when you realized, oh wait, like the things that I create out of what the gifting God has given me brings joy to other people?
Yes, definitely. So that's one of the things that I think, even as an adult now, I look at it and it gets me really excited to think about the fact that, like I was telling you earlier, it's like when your kid comes running up to you and is like, look at what I drew, and they're so excited and it brings you joy. It brings them joy. It brings the people around them joy. Sometimes when we see like a beautiful flower or something that's like full of color and you're going, how does that have so much color? Like, how was that created that way? It's like, that's the joy that God has in us. That's the joy that God has, like he had when he was creating everything. And it's really amazing to be able to do things and create things that other people go, what? And it brings them so much joy. And that's something that like nobody can take away. Nothing, there's no price tag on that. Like there's just no way,
And then, so like, this is like this realization you have and you're young. I mean, like you're a kid just sort of like doing this is what God, you don't even know that it's a gift from God. You're just, like as a kid, we think everybody does this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you're sort of like navigating, you're like, oh, well, this brings joy. And then you have this other experience, which I find fascinating, where you saw what the purpose of it could be for in a classroom setting. So share a little bit about that, because like there's this journey that has happened with you with art that is sort of, it's really remarkable how God has brought you from enjoying drawing or whatever to seeing that it brings joy to others and yourself, and then to see how it becomes sort of this blessing to other people in a more significant way.
Yeah. So are you talking about like the refuge part, like we were saying earlier? Yeah. So I was in a tough situation in a school, And, you know, you weren't allowed to, I kind of got into a little bit of trouble and got sent to the school, and you weren't allowed to take any pencils or anything in. And so, you know, I'm talking to the teachers and I'm always drawing and I'm always doing stuff. And then the teacher looks at me and she's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, well, I got in trouble and this is where I am. And so she was like, you know, I'm going to let them know that you can bring your color pencils and your coloring, your stuff. And I want you to work on something for me. And I was like, okay. So then the pressure is on. And so, you know, I was allowed to walk in with my sketchbook and my color pencils and just create and draw. And I drew this. It was a portrait of her family. And it brought her a lot of joy. And it also reminded me like how special I was. And so that teacher seeing that gifting and acknowledging that something was there is something that stood out to me. And it's something that I'm trying to do when I see other people creating or having that little gift, or, you know, they doubt themselves. Oh, I can't do it. I'm like, yes, you can. Yes, you can. So, yeah.
And it is the beauty of a teacher that like sees something in you and calls it out and sort of gives you permission to explore it, but also that you see a purpose in it, because it wasn't just sort of like refuge for you in that moment in being this difficult situation. At least I have my art supplies. It became a way of you, like, for you to minister to somebody, like bless your teacher who saw something in you. But then as you get older, like art as beautiful and sort of ethereal as it is, it's still a business. And so the pressures begin to mount about like your purpose as an artist. Is this a vocation? Is this something you just do for fun? And if it is, then how do I prove to the world that I'm important and my stuff is important, and then money, and then, oh, this is marketable and that's not. How did you navigate all of that?
So they don't call it a starving artist for nothing. Like, the supplies are expensive. Then there's a pressure. Like, I didn't go to, you know, some special school and get like training and do all this stuff. And so, you know, you're kind of like making it up as you go. You know, you're like, I have this creativity, I have this image in my mind, I'm creating it, but I don't know if I'm doing it the way other people are doing it. And so, you know, then you start looking at like other people's artwork and what are they creating and what are they selling and what's happening. And so this pressure like just hits you, and then you're no longer creating because you want to bring joy to people or because it's making you feel good or you're happy or it's worship for anyone. Like, it becomes this, like, the world almost takes it from you and puts on this extra pressure of like, oh, well, this is only worth this much, and only this many people liked it, and the critiques and it gets hard. Like, it gets really, really hard to not fall into that hole. And I started to at one point, but then it was like some years after I started coming back here that I started realizing like there is something different. Like, I had already seen it before, but it wasn't loud enough to catch my attention. Like, it wasn't strong enough. And I remember going up to Nancy Jones and being like, I want to do art for God. How are you guys doing this? Like, how do I join this Arts Guild thing? And what's going on? Like, I knew about it and I had done stuff when I was a kid, but like I said, the world can pull you and it can take you. And I see artist friends that are in the middle of that right now. And I'm just like, come, like, take that pressure off of you and just come this way, because there's another side to this. So yeah.
So then all of a sudden art, like the battle of art as sort of something that can produce income, that becomes a vocation, it really becomes worship. Art is worship.
Right.
Which ironically sort of like brings it back to some of that original underneath the table at a Catholic meeting, experiencing the presence of God and responding.
Yes, exactly.
Like,
and there's like this freedom, you know, that, and like I was saying to you earlier, like you get into the middle of creating your art and first your brain is just going, right? All your thoughts are going, you know, and then all of a sudden you're like, you lose that part, and it's almost like God starts talking to you while you're doing stuff, and things that he wanted you to experience or realize about yourself or tell you just start coming to the surface. And it's like Norbert always goes, oh, she's in that mode, you know, and it's like you're somewhere else. Like, it's like this whirlwind, like God has just taken you and he's like, I'm with you while you're doing this. And hours could go by. Like, you could be painting or creating or doing something for hours and you don't even you don't even notice it. Like, you don't even feel it.
And when it is connected, like in sort of connected to worship and to the presence of God, it really starts to fulfill a deeper longing. Like
Yeah,
it sort of like,
I'll never forget the Good Friday one that we created, and it was more of a live interactive kind of art. I mean, I was like in tears, like just falling to pieces doing that. And then to see people connecting to my art by putting their chain piece on the cross, I mean, like, God was like, yes, this is it. Like, this is it. And like the same thing, like I was telling you one time with the mural, you know, I'm at the wall on the lift painting, and I'm just sobbing, you know, and I'm like, what the world is happening? And it was just God's like all in that moment. And so it is a really, really beautiful way to worship. Like, we automatically think of worship, we think of instruments and music, and, you know, but there's also this creative side through art. Like, it's something like nothing else.
and so then as like you're navigating this, because this is all like, we're talking about like 7 years ago. I mean, this is pretty recent that like art as worship really became sort of a part of your life. And it, again, it all comes back to joy. This is a different joy. Now you realize that my art that's focused as worship brings a ton of joy to God. As he, you know, as I'm using my gifts to worship and give back to him, it's amazing. But at some point also you began to make the shift in art, like the journey then moved into art as ministry. And even just in the artist community. Share a little bit about like that, because it's opened up doors for you that wouldn't be open otherwise.
Yeah, so there's two things I can think of. Is one, it's been really, really awesome to, like, I worked with Brazen Table, and so, you know, the human trafficking victims, I was able to work with them and do art with them. And, you know, you put these supplies, and I always try to make it look real nice to them, so they walk up and they're like, wow, like, this is nice. And so, you know, and I print out pictures and they're ready to paint, but they get there and they sit down and they're like, oh, I can't do this, I'm not creative. And I'm just like, yeah, you are. Like, you have to give yourself like permission to be like, I can do this. Like, if you are the daughter of God, and he is like the most creative ultimate being. Like, there's creativity inside of you. You were born with it. You were made with it. It is inside of you. You just have to kind of let go of the pressures, let go, and just create and just do. And another thing that I'm noticing and I'm really excited about and trying to navigate is finding other artists that maybe aren't believers or have been curious, and you know, they're like, oh, you know, I give thanks to God, but they really haven't realized that that's Jesus, you know, and being able to kind of be in their world, you know, because I understand what they're going through, and then just watch them and love on them and create with them and just do art with them, where it's not like in this weird pressure, like we're trying to make living and we're trying to do all this stuff, but just create art with them and just love on them. And then they start asking like, well, why, you know, why are you like this? And it's like, well, because Jesus loves me, so I get to love on you. And so it's been a really cool experience. Like, I'm in that experience as we speak, like with several of my friends, and I acknowledge that I wouldn't be necessarily in their lives if it wasn't for art. Like, I wouldn't be able to reach them where they're at if I wasn't an artist. So yeah, it's definitely a gift.
It's interesting too, because like essentially there's you have this list of people that have spoken into you and called things out. So whether it is the Catholic lady who sees you under the table, or your grandmother, or this teacher that saw something in you, or somebody like Nancy Jones.
I mean, the list, I've been affirmed in this throughout my entire life. You know, from even my best friend, because I had put art down for a little bit after I had my kids and stuff. And my best friend coming up to me going, what's up? Like, you're supposed to be doing art. Like, you see that girl over there, that this artist that I thought was so cool. She's like, that's you right there. Like, yeah, this is who you are. And just God has always kind of like had to, like, it's almost like if he had to keep affirming me, like keep telling me. Like, he didn't just tell me one time, like, oh, you're an artist. You know, he was like, yeah, you're an artist. You're an artist. You're an artist. So, yeah.
And now, like with your new project, like, so you're in this, it's in the infancy stages of this new project. Really, the idea of art as ministry is taking even a farther step towards creating sort of art as refuge. So like almost giving up people the starting point that you had for the first time. Tell us a little bit about your art bus project and what you're working on now.
Okay, so, I've always had this dream of, I live in an underserved neighborhood, lower income. There's not access to art supplies. All the Joanne fabrics have closed down. It's missing everything. And so I've always had this dream of my neighborhood being this hub for art and for color, and being able to educate parents and kids and let them know you can go to HSPVA, you can go to a school that's going to cost you pretty much nothing and become an artist and have a job with it in your life, and it can go somewhere, and explaining that to teachers. Well, I wanted to do that in my home, but that seemed a little bit difficult and things were kind of not working out. And I also had this dream about this bus for 2 years, but that seemed far-fetched. I was a bus, and then during this COVID time, it just happened. God was just here's this bus. I got rid of something else that didn't need to be in my yard. And all this stuff just and it happened so easily. And the guy who sold me the bus blessed me. And before he even signed the paper, he stopped and he was like, look, I believe in what you're doing. My wife was like, get her this bus. The mechanic was like, I'm not going to charge you much more to get this thing fixed because I believe in what you're doing. And then went into this whole conversation about his life and how he struggled to get where he's at. But so then it became super clear, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so it's not so much to just bring people to my area, but for me, it's bigger than that. It's to go into the neighborhoods, into the different spaces where they maybe don't have access to these supplies. Going into the apartment complexes and setting up this bus and just fitting it with all these art supplies and letting people know it's free. Don't be afraid, come. Because I did try to do it once a few years ago and people were hesitant. They were like, what do you want from me? Are you trying to sell me something? But I want to be able to just give the same love that God has given me to other people, and then try to educate the parents of those kids, or even the adults. There's some adults that are like, well, I drew this one thing one time when I was a kid, and it's do it now. There's nothing stopping you. Yeah.
I mean, it goes back to that, calling stuff out and sort of giving this place where art can be a refuge for people. And especially in these underserved communities. I mean, even if the only outcome is a certain amount of time of peace and reflection and being able to express yourself.
You've already opened the door. I'll never forget also a story of Trisha saying that she hadn't really been creating and painting and stuff. And then one day she picks up a pack of watercolors and goes on this retreat and then discovered this gift that God had given her that she had no idea. And she was already a full-blown adult, and she wasn't a kid. So that's the exciting part, is this is something that can just speak to so many people, no matter what age, no matter what demographic, no matter that otherwise maybe would not have thought about it, would not have had access to the materials, and by having this bus and being able to just fill it with supplies and just go out there, I can go anywhere. It's amazing. And
again, I think your story is remarkable because art has been this constant that has sort of connected you to the presence of God. He's drawn you into mission and into worship through art. And we're actually in this unique time in history where the levels of stress are impossibly high for everyone. What would you say to somebody who's stressed out of their mind and they're thinking, oh man, if art could be a refuge, if art could be a place where I encounter the presence of God, if art could be a place that brings joy to myself, to others, to God, and if it would be a part of my worship, I would really love that, but I don't know where to start. What would you say to somebody like that?
I would say put on some worship music, grab a sketchbook, go to Jerry's, go to Walmart, get a sketchbook. It doesn't have to be anything expensive. Don't be intimidated by it. Just grab a sketchbook with no lines on it and get a pack of color pencils. Maybe get a pack of pencils that are watercolor, and just draw. Like there's some things where you can get like a 30-day, it's almost like a devotional, but it's a 30-day prompt. So you would write down the 30 days of the prompt for the art. And then, you know, you forget Monday and Tuesday, but Wednesday you're like, oh, I'm so stressed out. I don't want to watch TV anymore. I don't want to look at Facebook anymore, but I need something. And I can't just sit here and be like, okay, God, pray. You know, like you need some way to start. Open up that sketchbook, look at the day for the prompt that you have that day, and then just start sketching. And even if it looks crazy, turn the page, go to another one and start sketching. And you'll see that like you'll be in that moment. And sometimes God will just like talk to you and just make you feel things and hear things that you have no idea what it is sometimes. And sometimes it's super clear, you know, but you'll be lost in that moment and things will slip away. And sometimes what you drew probably seems like nothing, and sometimes something amazing will come out of it, but you never know like where that's going to go next. Like you don't know if you're just laying the foundation down for something else. It's like some paintings don't start off, you know, this grand painting. Some paintings are just the underpainting. You do a crazy sketch, you throw some color on the canvas, you call it a day, you walk away. But it's just being in that moment, you know, that's so important.
That's helpful, because for somebody like me with my personality, if I decide I'm going to get into art, I go straight. I'm like, okay, where are the oils? I need the giant canvas. Like, and then that's not a great place to start. So this is much more accessible. I like, even on a personal level, as things have gotten stressful around here, every once in a while I'll pick up my iPad and there's a mandala thing on there, and I just take my little, you know, pencil and color that thing in. Yeah, just. But I do love, first of all, I love in your story how the faithfulness and goodness of God has expressed itself to you through art, and through people, like through some of the most unlikely scenarios. He has continually confirmed his call on you for art, but also shown you how pleased he is with you using your gifts. And the more you've used them,
more in the unlikely scenarios, like in the scenarios where you set up your art and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this event and I'm going to do this whole thing, and you set it up so nicely and you prepare, sometimes you get nothing. But then in the moments where you least expect it, where like it just wouldn't happen, that's where he comes in. That's where he affirms you. So
yeah. Well, listen, I'm really grateful for this time to talk. I hope it's an encouragement to people, like as you're navigating stress. A great place to sort of start and to sort of jumpstart maybe some time with God's presence is grabbing a little sketchbook and just putting, like Veronica, like, you know, you said, putting on some worship and just sort of like being there and seeing what comes out of it. I think it's really helpful. And you can see Veronica's stuff all over this building. You can see it on the outside, on the inside, in the nursery, and, you know, all over the place. But thank you. This was great.
Yeah, thank you.
And if people want to figure out and follow what you're doing with your art busts, how do they do that?
I have Facebook and Instagram. It's Paintbrush Express.
All right. Paintbrush Express. All right. Well, we'll talk later. We're in the same building. We're just Zooming so that it can get recorded. But thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.